after the celebrations. And I'm sure the year ahead is going to bring, as they say, Ganesh is the Vigna Harta. So a lot of the past is going to be behind us, and we hope to see a much better future. As Mr. Viral Acharya was saying, things moving for the better, and government and RBI and everybody working towards a brighter and better future. Not always in agreement on most things, but still working to find ways that we can take the country to the next level. I must compliment you, Rakesh, on your effort to bring together thoughts and experiences and the practices that several of the illustrious business leaders followed over the last 25 years of economic reform. Of course, I was just wondering whether India transformed or transforming would be the right title, because we still are in that journey. We're still going through a lot of evolution, a lot of things are happening, things are changing for the better by the day, by the hour. But yet 25 years hold a lot of promise, hold a lot of experience and information which can help us plan for the next 25 years. Clearly 1991 was an inflection point in many of our companies' lives, in many of our business lives, in the lives of so many professionals, and therefore in the life of the country as well. Through this journey, all your contributors have explained what they did, how they did, what was the impact of their actions, some good, some not so good. But I think the biggest achievement that 91 brought to fore was the change in mindset. I think the mindset of the nation changed in 91. What we had imagined or what we had assumed to be a nation, as Chanda rightly said, growing at maybe 4.5%, in a good year 5%, and being generally happy about what we were achieving so far, changed to an aspirational India. An India that could imagine big things and good things happening in the country. An India which was not willing to accept that whatever is there and we have to live in that. And I think that change in mindset really defines this period of last 25 years. Over the 25 years, of course, we've had some periods where the process of reform faced some hiccups. So you had a very strong start in 1991. Period 91 to 94 gave us a huge leg up on the journey. Around 95, the then government, I think, slowed down. They had their own challenges, election coming up, political decisions overtaking economic decisions. And I would think 95 to 98, we saw a little bit of a hiatus. Clearly, the 2 years of the United Front government in 96 to 98 wasn't able to do much, despite the fact that they came up with big bang budgets and dream budgets and all. But I think just a budget or just some tinkering with certain aspects of taxation cannot really sustain a long-term growth agenda. Post 98 also, if one sees the first 2 years of the NDA government under Mr. Vajpayee, I think they were still wetting their feet in the water. There was political instability during that period. We saw an election within 18 months, post 98 and then one in 99. So we had another 2 years of opportunity lost. So if you ask me, after 3 good years, and one must compliment the then Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, who unfortunately his own party seems to have relegated not even into the history books, but probably even outside that. But he really was the person who enabled, who empowered the then government to bring about such transformational reforms. And after that, this 6-7 year journey where we didn't see much happening, we saw some benefits. So technically we removed the industrial license. That is a great thing that happened. We possibly did a lot of reform on the financial world, FDI, making it easier to get investment into the country, banking sector. So we saw an element of change, but not enough to take the country to the levels that we saw in the period 2000 to 2010. I think it was Mr. Vajpayee's government from 2000 to 2004 that possibly did some of the most game-changing reforms, sector after sector. You see the new licensing policy in the telecom sector in 1999. You look at what happened in the road sector, huge thrust given both to rural roads, the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, as well as the Golden Quadrilateral, the huge investments to create a national grid of highways, super highways. It was around that period that we saw the Mumbai-Pune expressway, which was the first truly world-class road that India made. And the testimony to its quality, to the effort and planning that went behind it, is that even today you can drive at 160 kilometers per hour on that road. We saw changes happening in the electricity sector, the new electricity amendments, the new Electricity Act of 2003 that came in. You saw India going in for large-scale oil and gas exploration around that period. A lot of licenses were given out. The new licensing policy came out at that point of time. It was around the same time that you saw housing getting a big boost. If you look back, and today employment and labor and jobs is one of the most important statistics that everybody looks at. The largest job growth that has happened in independent India happened during that 2000 to 2004 period. If you look back at the numbers, during 2000 and 2005, I think we added nearly 60 million jobs in the Indian economy. And most of them came in through infrastructure and real estate. That's the numbers that I remember, because I remember a lot of debates with Arnab Goswami after that, when we used to highlight the fact that 2000 to 2005, we saw 60 million jobs being created in different sectors. And from 5 to 10, it trickled down to probably 20 to 27 lakhs, 2.7 million or thereabouts. These days one has to be very careful remembering those figures, because you have these websites which are continuously trying to pick up a flaw in your figures. But if I remember broadly, this used to be the number, about 6 crore jobs and then 27 lakh jobs. That was the kind of drastic fall that we saw in the post-2005 period. But if you look back also to another dimension which you are seeing nowadays, is the strategic sale of PSU companies that was undertaken during 2000 to 2004. That process was started then. You saw hotels getting disinvested. You saw a number of sick units closing down and getting disinvested. Post 2004, when the economy, and if you look back again, 2004, we had very good macroeconomic indicators. Very often we used to joke with Mr. Vajpayee that he spent most of his time fixing the economy, setting the parameters of the economy right. And by the last 2 years of his government, we saw that big thrust, the growth rates almost doubled from 98 to 2004. It became, I think, 8.4% or thereabouts under the old series in 2003-04. And on the back of a strong economy with, I think, $119 billion of foreign exchange reserves, which was also a huge change. It was 29. During the good times, if you would have kept away some money for the bad times in the future, possibly we wouldn't have had to do what happened during 2007, 8 and 8, 9. We saw during that period, 2008, 9, the fiscal deficit was allowed to slide within the year from 2.9% of the then GDP to 6.1% of GDP. Within the year, this was a decision taken mid-course. During the year, we allowed fiscal deficit to almost double from 2.9% to 6.1%, because during 2004 and 8, whatever were the large reserves that were available, that could have been available with the government, we frittered it all away in large amounts of subsidies. So everything was subsidized. That feel-good factor in the system, albeit for a short term, may have won a particular government an election, but cost the Indian economy so dear that 2008, 9, 10 period, where possibly growth went up as high as 9%, 9.5%, but it was an artificial growth on the back of large amounts of money being primed into the economy. And then we saw 2010 to 14, 4 years of distress in the economy. And all the problems that we accumulated between 8 and 10 coming home to roost between 10 and 14. Of course, it was also a period where inflation then took its toll because of large fiscal deficits. As Viralji just said, with inflation, you're logically going to have inflation, and the Reserve Bank today is trying to fix both the inflation and interest numbers right. During this period, we also saw large current account deficits come back into the economy. During this period, we saw the cost that the nation paid for large amounts of corruption scandals. While the corruption scandals came out in 2010, 11, 12, or 8, 9, 10, 11, the reality is it was UPA 1 when Commonwealth happened, when the Colgate happened, when the 2G telecom scam happened, when the Devas and Antrix Devas scam happened. All those scams actually happened in 2004 to 9, but came to light between 9 to 14 and completely demolished the mood of the nation, the investment psyche of the nation, and created a policy paralysis, which then once again took its toll in this journey of India's transformation. So you once again had a period, 2010, I would say, to 14, where almost all processes in government came to a standstill. So you had a process which Viralji just referred to in banking, of evergreening all the NPAs during that period. You kept the books good, you showed a good performance, but the reality was not really good. You saw government officers not taking decisions. You saw the aftermath of the Colgate resulting in all government allotments and sanctions and government natural resources coming to a standstill. So what I was trying to say is this fits and starts that have occurred over the last 25 years have also taken a toll on the national economy. And while there's no denying that during this period there was growth in national wealth, there's no denying that we were able to reduce poverty, there's no denying that a new class of neo-middle class, the people who have just come out of poverty, may not yet have a good quality of life, but are somewhere in between. A very large neo-middle class got created. But we also got rid of shortages in many areas. LPG cylinders, for example, once upon a time, members of parliament would get a 25 coupon book, which was like a passport to even a doctor's appointment. The first ever time we got an appointment with Dr. Advani, the famous oncologist, I remember the most attractive thing for his secretary was the gas coupon that my wife was able to give him, and got us a walk-in interview with the doctor. That was the sorry, sad state of affairs in the country. You had a situation pre-91 where telephony was what, 1%, 1.5% in the country? Post-99 and the new licensing policy in telecom, today we can boast of almost 70-75% people being connected with telephones and at abysmally low rates. No shortages of any kind in a variety of basic amenities that the people of India need. So there have been great outcomes out of this liberalization process. But to my mind, we could have aspired for much more. And I remember when in 2014, when this government came in, when we were taking stock of the legacy, and I remember at that point of time, there was a lot of clamor that we come out with a white paper. We tell the world what really is the state of the Indian nation. But it was the wisdom of Prime Minister Modi and Finance Minister Mr. Jaitley that they decided against it. They decided that this would not do the country any good. It would be like washing your dirty linen in front of the whole world and cause more agony to the nation and the economy. We should rather go around and see what we can do to repair what we have inherited. After all these NPAs that are being talked about today, not a single loan has been given during the last 3 years. In any case, I think today the bankers are so risk-averse that they are in any case not sanctioning any large loans. But all of this is a legacy which may be as old as 10 years, 12 years, 5 years, which had kept on being evergreen, as Viralji just said, but has now been recognized for its true color for the first time. And if you look back, what was the situation we inherited? As I said, policy paralysis, economy once again down to a growth rate of about 4.2%, current account deficits also at about 4% or thereabouts. Inflation was in double digits, particularly CPI. Interest rates skyrocketing. Fiscal deficit was about 4.5% or so. There was not a single macroeconomic parameter on which we could take pride. Of course, between 2004 and 14, our foreign exchange reserves had gone up from 114 billion to about 300 or 290 billion. But there was a corresponding increase on the external debt of the nation also. So net, there was really no accretion to our foreign exchange reserves like we had seen between 1998 and 2004, where without increasing debt, we had been able to almost quadruple the foreign exchange reserves. So we were in a situation where the path before us were two. One, we could have done what was done in 2008-9 and look at letting the fist slide, letting there be a false sense of prosperity quickly. That's the quick fix solutions. Let the bankers continue to do the NPA resolution as they have done over the years, evergreen, restructure, different forms of restructuring, patiently and slowly wait for some time when hopefully the account will by itself become all right. And I'm not completely saying that was wrong. It had its own merits, it had its own advantages. Maybe politically it could have been very advantageous for us. But Prime Minister Modi thought of a more sustainable path to achieve what Mr. Rakesh Mohan has just suggested, that now India needs to plan how we are going to have sustainable growth in double digits. Not for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years term of a government, but for at least 2 or 3 decades, so that once and for all, this country can meet the aspirations of 1 billion plus people, an aspiration for a better quality of life, an aspiration for all the basic amenities, an aspiration for a livelihood, as Chanda said. And to my mind, our effort of the last 3 years has been focused on building that framework which can sustain the national economy, which can ensure that India provides a platform for investment, provides a platform for growth, which is both economically prudent, environmentally sustainable, and if I may add, honest. And in that sense, if one looks at the last 3 years gone by, it's been 3 years of attacking all the things that we think were going wrong in the country. We have had a sustained attack on corruption and black money, literally right from the first cabinet meeting when the SIT on black money was set up. A series of steps thereafter, I will not go into each one of those, culminating with the large big one that was the demonetization on 8th of November. One can argue what one believes was good or bad in that. But we believe that unless that kind of a real attack on black money was in the marketplace, was there before the country, we would never have been able to give the GST a fair run in this country. Given the large amount of informal economy and the fact that India, World Bank says 20%, some estimates go as high as 40%, was largely an informal economy. Unless all that informal economy comes into the formal economy, becomes a part of the formal economy, which the GST has been designed to really capture, we'll never be able to really make this a truly honest country. And I think that's been the effort that this government has consistently over the 3 years focused on, policy after policy. And today, we've made it so iron-fisted that no government in the future, no minister in the future can ever give out the national resources of this country, resources which really belong to all of you, without a due process. And I remember when we first formed the new law for coal block auctions, one of the Sundays I landed up in Delhi at about 4 o'clock, put together, assembled my whole team, and for the next 8 hours, all that we did, maybe because we were inefficient, as Rakesh ji just said, we had to work till late hours during that period to get the whole thing done in 6 months. When the court asked, how much time do you need to auction all these mines, at least the operating mines, Mr. Mukul Rohde, the then AG, had said, whatever my lord decides. And they said by 31st March. And I would challenge anybody to come out with a parallel where from the day the court cancelled 204 coal mines on 25th of September 2014, within 6 months, we were able to auction out all the operational mines. Some of them were allotted to the states, which were already with the states, within a defined frame which included framing a new law, passing the law, failing to pass it the first time in December, and then putting out another ordinance and passing it in March of 2015, and simultaneously on a calendar making sure we meet our deadline within 6 months. But all of this is leading to create a framework which will ensure honesty in this country for, I think, not only generations, but for the future of India. Nobody can ever change this psyche that has been created, that politicians or bureaucrats cannot dole out benefits to anybody free of charge. There will be a due process. And I remember those 8 hours we spent, I had one mandate given to my team, and I was sitting with them. I said that even if I want my own brother to get a coal block, or if the Prime Minister asked me to give a coal block to somebody, I should not have the ability to do it. Let's pick holes in the law that we have framed and go through line by line and see that we have no ability at all to favor anybody at all. And with that precision, you look at each of the policies that this government has focused on. And what is the holistic approach of the government? Let me take the example of financial inclusion, since there are a lot of people from the financial world here. 27th of August, 4 days from now, we'll complete 3 years of the launching of the Jan Dhan accounts. 3 glorious years, if I may say so. I remember at Davos in 2015, which was barely 4 or 5 months after that, the president of the World Bank, in an interaction on financial inclusion, said it is beyond our imagination how India could ensure that at least one member of every family and 99% of the households in the country, in a span of 4 months, have at least one bank account all across the country, the length and breadth of rural and urban India. 4 months, and every household in the country had at least one bank account, more often than not in the name of the lady. Now look at the transformational change that has had. Not that financial inclusion is anything new. I'm sure Chanda has been talking of it for the last 15 years. But the speed, the scale, the skill with which we implemented the program, to take it to every household. And look at the holistic approach and the benefits we got out of it. Because of that, we were able to take social security schemes to every household. We began with a small 1 rupee a month, 12 rupee accident insurance. And we get a lot of cases, a lot of feedback, where people who died of a sudden accident, a car accident or anything, who otherwise the family would have got into poverty or despair, at least this 2 lakh rupees gives them a breathing space to get back into life. The 1 rupee a day, 2 lakh rupee life insurance policy that we gave out, both under with the support of the insurance companies. So social security was one straight fallout benefit. The direct benefit transfer, nearly 60,000 crore rupees saved so far, only because we have moved gradually more and more things to direct benefit transfer. You're all aware of the DBT in LPG subsidy, for instance. Now it is 100% only DBT in LPG subsidy. I remember the earlier days we used to keep arguing on the television whether one should get 4 cylinders or 6 cylinders or 8 cylinders. Prime Minister Modi said, no, give everybody as many cylinders as they want. But ask the people to give up their subsidy. And I'm sure each one of you in this room must have given up your subsidy under the Give It Up program. And you draw satisfaction today that when you gave up your subsidy, it was not misused or went into some corruption. It went to give a free LPG connection to a poor woman who otherwise has to take in 400 cigarette smoke every day, cooking in an old chula with wood or coal. So you draw that satisfaction that your saving, your contribution, what Mr. Mohan said, somewhat what Kennedy had said, that all the panelists today spoke about what they would do for the country, not what they want the government to do for them. In a similar way, all of you gave up your LPG subsidy so that a poor woman could get the benefit of that subsidy. Then the Mudra Yojana, over 3 lakh crore rupees, gone to nearly 7.5 crore small beneficiaries. And today we had a meeting on that. We were seeing the statistics. About more than 60% of the Mudra loanees are women. More than 75% of the loans are about 50,000 rupees average amount. So really the small man, the common man, getting out of the clutches of the moneylender, getting money at 10 and 11%, able to make a livelihood in this changing world, where jobs are not going to come out of government, jobs are not going to come out of maybe large power plants and large steel plants, as much as they'll come out of the startups of tomorrow, as much as they'll come out from the decentralized way energy is going to be produced tomorrow. I was doing a math, Anandji, a 4,000 megawatt power plant, thermal power plant, would provide 1/10 the jobs that an equal amount of energy produced through solar would provide. 1/10. In the same way, as services become more and more important, as we move towards promoting tourism, as we move towards having better and better infrastructure in the country, livelihoods are not going to be created only through formal jobs. The whole paradigm of jobs in this country is changing. Why in this country? Across the world. And each of the speakers, whether it was the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore, whether it was Mr. Michael Porter, whoever came on the Niti Aayog lectures, their one central point was in this changing world where 3D manufacturing is coming in, where artificial intelligence is going to rule the roost. In this world of innovation, the nature of jobs, nature of investment is completely going to change. Which is why our thinking is that how do we move away from traditional way of working? And over the last 2 weeks, we've engaged with 400 of the brightest young minds, young startups, young entrepreneurs, young CEOs. We've had 2 sessions over the last 2 weeks, and some truly good ideas have emerged from these sessions, where all your colleagues, maybe your children in many cases here, have actually aligned themselves to thinking about the new India, the India of tomorrow. What can we do in the next 5 years to ensure that every citizen gets a roof on his head, every citizen gets 24/7 electricity at home? Can we ensure clean drinking water for every citizen of India? Can we upgrade the quality of healthcare and education? Can we ensure at least a toilet in everybody's homes? And ladies and gentlemen, that is the vision that this government is working on. We have just concluded 75 years of the Quit India movement. 1942, 9th of August 1942. We'll be celebrating 75 years of India's independence on 15th August 2022. This gives us a 5-year window. Just like our freedom fighters fought for India, fought for this independence that we all value so much, fought for the Constitution, which has only yesterday rightly said that triple talaq is wrong and will be stopped and will not be allowed to continue. A legacy of I don't know how many years old, which in today's world can just not be acceptable to anybody. All of these things in independent India are possible only because we have independence. But can we now make sure that this independence reaches the 1.3 billion people, goes beyond the frontiers of Mumbai and Delhi and Bengaluru into rural India? Can we see how we can make our agriculturist stand on his own feet, rather than only arguing and discussing whether we should have done a farm loan waiver for the agriculturists or not? And since that issue has come up, I must say, and I must say to all of you in this room, that I see a lot of voices and a lot of noises being made about the agricultural loan waiver being wrong. I wish some of us looks back into our past. Some of us may have lived in the villages also, I don't know. I didn't live in the villages, but I do know my father studied under a street light to do his engineering course, or at least to be eligible to become an engineer. I know that even today, there are millions of farmers with less than 2 or 3 acres of land, barely making a not even having a sustainable living. Very often the women in the house, in the agriculturist's home, doesn't sell her produce. She'd rather just keep it aside, box it for the next 365 days, so that she can give one meal at least to her child. When we are trying to empower that, and this is on the back of 2 or 3 years of bad monsoon. We've had drought for 2 or 3 years. When you write off a loan of 50,000 crores or 40,000 crores for an industry which went wrong, and all of us investment bankers, me included in my earlier avatar, make out all those fancy spreadsheets, talk about sustainable debt, talk about rewriting our books of accounts, talk about revaluing our assets, because we've been blessed to have large amounts of assets. How can you lose sight of the fact that there's a large section of India which can't make 2 ends meet, where malnourishment still prevails, where the child goes without milk within the first year of his birth, where pregnant women don't get good health care, where a person in Orissa has to carry a lady for 12 kilometers on his shoulder to reach the nearest medical center, only to find that he's too late. So it's very easy to criticize that a poor person gets a benefit of 50,000 or 1 lakh rupees. It pinches all of us in this room. But we don't bat an eyelid when we find that somebody has skimmed away maybe 10,000 crores from a company through over-invoicing or bad investments. We'll party with all of them. We'll break bread with all of them. We are very comfortable in flying on our private jets. I do wish, I'm sorry, I think I've exceeded my brief, India transforming or transformed, but the reality is still there in rural India. The reality is still there in the slums, and you don't have to go too far. We can get them all across Mumbai, anywhere you want to go. I remember campaigning for my mother in the slums of Kolivada and Vadala, some of the worst slums you can ever imagine in our backyard. And believe me, nobody likes to live in that way. Don't think there's any virtue or they are very happy living there. Each one of them has come here because he had to come here. He wanted to feed his children. He wanted to make maybe 2,000, 5,000 rupees just to eke out a living. And we as policymakers, Mr. Acharya, you, me, all of us, will have to be sensitive to the real India. Very easy to make policy in our offices, whether I sit in Delhi or you sit in Main Street. But there is a real India out there. We'll have to be sensitive to that real India. We'll have to be sensitive to reality on the ground. We'll have to be sensitive to what we are doing and the impact of what we are doing to that last man at the bottom of the pyramid. Because unless we resolve the aspirations of the poor person, the poor farmer, at the absolute bottom of the pyramid, you will be landing up in a situation where today we have 120 odd left-wing extremism infested districts. Who knows what can happen tomorrow? We have tribal areas barely 70 kilometers from here, Anand, in Palghar. Go and see the state of affairs. The world is not limited to the world that each one of us is living in. And therefore, while India has transformed, a lot of achievements under our belt in the last 25 years, I think the time is ripe for all of us to reflect on what should be done, what each one of us can do, how we can participate in the journey going forward, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 30 years, to really take the country to the next level of growth, inclusive growth, growth which reaches the poorest of the poor, growth which is holistic, growth which impacts every section of society, particularly the marginalized, particularly those who for years have been discriminated against. And to my mind, when all of us put our hearts and our minds together to work for the transformation of India in the next 25 years, then I'm sure come 2042, maybe I may not be there, but a lot of youngsters in this room will certainly be there to take pride in the fact that we all participated to make India an honest country, a corruption-free country, a developed country, a country that cares for every citizen in the land, a country that is with a heart of gold. Thank you very much.
Wonderfully passionate speech. I think he deserves another loud round of applause. What a... And I'd like to invite Vikram up on the stage so we can release the book. And don't leave before buying a book and listening to my vote of thanks. I worked hard at it. So go buy a book. Rakesh will be here on stage to sign it after the book is launched. So shall we? Oh, okay. I finally get my moment in the sun. My name, as you know, is Bunty Chand, and I work for the Asia Society. And And I do want to thank Minister Piyush Goyal, who has come all the way from Delhi to join us this evening. But, you know, the author of this book really deserves special applause. And this is Rakesh's fourth appearance at the Asia Society in India, leave alone other Asia Society centers around the world. And so we at the Asia Society, and I personally consider him a great friend. So thank you for being here this evening and for sharing your new work with us, Rakesh. And I also want to thank Viral, who has so kindly spoken twice at the Asia Society hosted events in very quick succession. So thank you this evening. And Chanda, the Asia Society honored you in 2015 as an Asia Game Changer, an award to honor true leaders making a positive contribution to the future of Asia. So we are very happy that you could join us this evening. And I saved the best for the last. Anand Mahindra has been an enthusiastic supporter and a long-time supporter of Asia Society, even before Asia Society arrived on the shores of Mumbai 12 years ago. So thank you for taking the time to participate this evening, Anand. And I would love to extend a very sincere thank you to Forbes Marshall for supporting the program. And they have extended their support by joining us this evening from Pune. Thank you very much. And of course, any vote of thanks would be very incomplete if I didn't thank Vikram Mehta, who is the chairman of Brookings India, and the wonderful Brookings team, Nitika and Shruti, who have worked with us to put the program together this evening. But most importantly, I think the program is a product of Asia Society's impressive team of players. Karishma, who led the